If you think love is about pleasing her, agreeing with her, or never upsetting her, then this message will unsettle you. Because the truth is, what makes a woman feel safe is not what makes her fall deeply in love. And what makes her fall in love often looks like emotional danger at first. Stay with me till the end, because if you misunderstand this idea, you won't just lose her attraction, you'll lose her respect. A woman does not fall in love through comfort alone. Comfort keeps her calm, but it does not keep her emotionally engaged. What truly creates attachment is contrast, the subtle, powerful experience of moving between emotional safety and emotional stimulation. When everything feels predictable, the heart goes quiet. When there is no emotional movement, no tension, no depth to explore, attraction slowly fades, even if affection remains. Emotional contrast keeps her present, alert, and internally invested because it gives her something to feel, something to respond to, something that awakens her emotional intelligence rather than putting it to sleep. Emotional contrast is created when a man can be both firm and gentle, certain yet curious, grounded but not emotionally flat. When she experiences warmth followed by distance, clarity followed by silence, strength followed by vulnerability, her mind stays engaged. This is not manipulation, it is polarity. A woman is emotionally wired to respond to shifts in energy. She wants to feel that the man in front of her has layers, depth, and a strong internal world. When he is always agreeable, always available, always emotionally exposed, there is nothing left to discover. Contrast creates curiosity, and curiosity is the doorway to emotional attachment. When a man can say no without anger and yes without desperation, that contrast communicates emotional maturity. When he listens deeply but does not lose his position, she feels both seen and challenged. Her emotions move because she cannot fully predict him, yet she trusts him because his behavior is consistent in values, not in emotional reactions. This balance between reliability and mystery makes her feel emotionally alive. She senses that being with him will expand her rather than trap her in routine, and that feeling is what turns interest into emotional investment. Many men believe consistency means always being the same emotionally, but that kind of sameness kills polarity. True consistency lies in principles, not in emotional expression. A man who can be playful one moment and serious the next, silent when needed and expressive when it matters, creates an emotional rhythm that keeps her connected. She begins to associate him with feeling deeply rather than feeling safe alone. Safety without stimulation feels like friendship. Stimulation without safety feels like chaos. Emotional contrast holds both in one place, and that is where love begins to form. When emotional contrast is present, a woman feels both grounded and slightly unsettled. And that unsettled feeling is not anxiety, it is attraction. It keeps her emotionally present because her heart is responding, adjusting, sensing. She does not feel emotionally babysat, nor does she feel emotionally abandoned. She feels met. And in being met, she starts attaching meaning to the man who can move her inner world without overwhelming it, who can hold space for her emotions while maintaining his own emotional center, who brings both calm and spark into her life at the same time. Every woman carries an internal narrative about who she is, how love works, and what she must do to stay emotionally safe. These narratives are built from past experiences, disappointments, and survival strategies. They are not lies in the conscious sense. They are emotional shortcuts the mind creates to avoid pain. When a man enters her life, she doesn't just meet him as he is, she meets him through these filters. I don't need anyone. I'm stronger alone. Love always costs too much. These beliefs protect her, but they also limit her ability to connect deeply. Breaking her illusions means gently confronting these stories, not with words, but with consistent behavior that exposes their cracks. A man who truly impacts a woman's heart does not argue with her defenses. He doesn't try to convince her she's wrong or force vulnerability out of her. Instead, he becomes the quiet contradiction to everything she believes she must be. When she expects abandonment, he remains steady. When she anticipates control, he offers freedom. When she prepares for emotional chaos, he responds with calm. Over time, her internal story begins to feel outdated in his presence, and that realization is far more powerful than any reassurance. Her illusions don't collapse because she's pressured. They dissolve because they no longer make sense. Breaking illusions also means refusing to participate in emotional games. Many women test unconsciously, not to manipulate, but to confirm whether their old beliefs are still true. Will he leave if I'm difficult? Will he weaken if I pull away? Will he chase if I withhold? A man who reacts emotionally feeds these illusions. A man who stays grounded breaks them. He doesn't punish distance with silence or reward chaos with attention. His emotional responses are measured, intentional, and aligned with self-respect. This consistency forces her nervous system to recalibrate because her usual strategies stop working. When her illusions start to crack, discomfort arises. She may feel confused, emotional, or unsettled because the identity she's been living in no longer fits. This is where most men panic and try to restore comfort. But comfort at this stage would mean rebuilding the illusion. Growth requires tension. Breaking her illusions means allowing her to feel the discomfort of self-awareness while remaining emotionally present. You don't rescue her from her feelings, and you don't abandon her in them. You stay steady and unreactive, which signals emotional safety at a deeper level than reassurance ever could. As her illusions fade, something profound happens. She begins to experience herself differently around you. She feels less guarded, less performative, less defensive. She doesn't need to prove strength or hide vulnerability because your presence doesn't demand a mask. The bond that forms here is not based on fantasy or projection. It is rooted in truth. And truth creates intimacy that fear-based love never can, because she is no longer relating to you through who she needed to be to survive, but through who she actually is beneath those protective stories. A woman begins to bond deeply when she senses that her emotions do not intimidate you. Most people are comfortable with happiness, softness, and affection, but emotional intimacy is tested when emotions become intense, messy, or unpredictable. When a woman expresses anger, sadness, confusion, or vulnerability, she is not simply reacting to the moment. She is revealing her internal world. Many men, without realizing it, interpret these emotional expressions as danger signals and rush to fix, explain, defend, or withdraw. In doing so, they communicate fear. And when a woman senses fear in a man, she instinctively pulls back because fear signals emotional instability rather than safety. When you don't fear her emotional reactions, you create a space where she doesn't need to manage herself for you. She doesn't have to soften her truth or censor her feelings to keep you calm. This freedom allows her to drop the emotional armor she wears in most relationships. Instead of escalating emotions to be heard or suppressing them to avoid conflict, she begins to regulate naturally because your presence is not reactive. Emotional safety is not built through agreement or constant reassurance. It is built through emotional steadiness. A man who can sit with discomfort without being overwhelmed becomes an anchor rather than a trigger. Fear of emotional reactions often shows up as over-explaining, apologizing prematurely, or becoming defensive. These behaviors may seem caring on the surface, but they signal emotional insecurity underneath. When you rush to soothe her emotions at the cost of your own truth, she senses imbalance. She doesn't feel held. She feels responsible. A woman does not bond with a man she has to emotionally manage. She bonds with the man who can listen fully, respond thoughtfully, and remain internally grounded even when the emotional intensity rises. This groundedness allows her to explore her emotions without fear of losing you or overwhelming you. When a man remains calm during emotional storms, something shifts in a woman's nervous system. She begins to feel that emotions are not dangerous in this connection. Her tears do not push you away. Her anger does not collapse you. Her confusion does not create chaos. Instead, your steady presence communicates strength, maturity, and emotional capacity. This is deeply attractive because it signals that you are capable of long-term connection, not just surface-level harmony. She can feel deeply with you without fearing abandonment or emotional retaliation. Over time, this dynamic builds trust at a level words cannot reach. She starts to reveal more of herself, not because she is asked to, but because she feels safe to. Her emotional expression becomes more honest and less reactive because she no longer needs to test your stability. The bond deepens as she associates you with emotional freedom rather than emotional consequence. She learns that she can be fully human around you and that her emotions do not threaten the connection but strengthen it because they are met with presence rather than fear. Attraction does not grow from constant approval, it grows from respect. When a woman encounters a man who is willing to disappoint her without betraying himself, something shifts in how she perceives him. Most people are conditioned to avoid discomfort in relationships, believing that love means agreement, accommodation, and emotional smoothing. But when a man consistently prioritizes being liked over being honest, he slowly erodes his own value. A woman may appreciate the ease at first, but over time she senses the lack of substance. Integrity, on the other hand, introduces friction, and friction creates depth. Disappointing her with integrity does not mean being harsh, dismissive, or emotionally unavailable. It means choosing truth over convenience. It means saying no when yes would be easier, holding a boundary when bending it would gain temporary approval, and expressing a perspective even when it challenges her expectations. A man who does this calmly and respectfully demonstrates emotional self-trust. He is not controlled by the fear of losing her favor. That inner stability becomes attractive because it signals that his identity exists independently of the relationship. When a woman experiences disappointment in this context, it feels different from rejection. It may frustrate her, but it also grounds her. She senses that she is dealing with a man who has a center, someone who will not reshape himself to fit her moods or demands. This creates a subtle but powerful sense of safety. She may not always like his decisions, but she begins to trust them. Trust is not built on constant agreement. It is built on consistency of character. A man who disappoints her with integrity shows that his values are reliable, even when they are inconvenient. Many men fear that disappointing a woman will cause emotional distance, but the opposite often happens. When a man stands his ground respectfully, it forces her to confront her own expectations. She becomes more self-aware. She cannot control the connection through emotional pressure or approval. Instead, she must engage with him as an equal. This shift increases attraction because it restores polarity. She is no longer the emotional authority in the relationship. She is responding to a man who leads himself. Over time, these moments of disappointment become the foundation of deeper attraction. She remembers the times he didn't abandon his truth to keep the peace. She recalls how he remained calm, kind, and firm under pressure. These memories accumulate into respect, And respect transforms desire. She may not always feel pleased, but she feels secure in knowing that the man she is with will not disappear emotionally, distort himself, or resent her silently. Integrity gives her something solid to lean on, something real to attach to, something that feels stable even when emotions fluctuate. A woman feels drawn to the man who can guide emotional energy rather than be consumed by it. Emotional leadership is not about dominance or control. It is about regulation. When emotions rise in a relationship, someone sets the tone either through calm presence or reactive behavior. A man who reacts impulsively to every emotional shift creates instability, even if his intentions are good. Reactivity signals that emotions are in charge, not awareness. A woman may feel temporarily validated by strong reactions, but over time she feels unsafe because there is no steady ground beneath the connection. Emotional leadership begins with self-mastery. A man who understands his own emotional landscape does not need to project it onto others. He does not lash out when misunderstood or withdraw when challenged. Instead, he pauses, observes, and chooses his response. This ability to slow down emotional momentum changes the dynamic between him and a woman. She senses that her emotions are not driving the relationship off course. They are being acknowledged without being amplified. This creates a sense of containment where feelings can exist without becoming destructive. When a woman expresses emotion, she is often seeking clarity, not conflict. A reactive man hears accusation where there is vulnerability or disrespect where there is fear. He meets emotion with emotion and the situation escalates. An emotionally leading man listens beneath the words. He recognizes the emotional need behind the reaction. By responding rather than reacting, he brings the conversation back to balance. His tone remains steady, his boundaries remain intact, and his presence remains engaged. This steadiness allows her to feel heard without needing to push harder or become louder. Emotional leadership also means knowing when to step forward and when to step back. It is not constant reassurance or constant silence. It is attunement. A man who leads emotionally can sense when his presence is needed and when space will restore balance. He does not disappear to punish, nor does he hover to control outcomes. This discernment builds trust because his actions are intentional rather than impulsive. A woman feels that the relationship is guided by awareness, not by emotional turbulence. Over time, this pattern creates deep attraction. She associates him with emotional clarity rather than emotional chaos. She feels lighter around him because she does not have to anticipate explosions or manage his moods. His emotional leadership allows her to relax into her own feelings, knowing they will not overwhelm the connection. This dynamic fosters admiration, respect, and desire because he becomes a stabilizing force in her emotional world. Someone who can hold intensity without being ruled by it, someone who leads with presence rather than reaction. A woman feels drawn to the man who can guide emotional energy rather than be consumed by it. Emotional leadership is not about dominance or control. It is about regulation. When emotions rise in a relationship, someone sets the tone, either through calm presence or reactive behavior. A man who reacts impulsively to every emotional shift creates instability, even if his intentions are good. Reactivity signals that emotions are in charge, not awareness. A woman may feel temporarily validated by strong reactions, but over time she feels unsafe because there is no steady ground beneath the connection. Emotional leadership begins with self-mastery. A man who understands his own emotional landscape does not need to project it onto others. He does not lash out when misunderstood or withdraw when challenged. Instead, he pauses, observes, and chooses his response. This ability to slow down emotional momentum changes the dynamic between him and a woman. She senses that her emotions are not driving the relationship off course. They are being acknowledged without being amplified. This creates a sense of containment where feelings can exist without becoming destructive. When a woman expresses emotion, she is often seeking clarity, not conflict. A reactive man hears accusation where there is vulnerability, or disrespect where there is fear. He meets emotion with emotion, and the situation escalates. An emotionally leading man listens beneath the words. He recognizes the emotional need behind the reaction. By responding rather than reacting, he brings the conversation back to balance. His tone remains steady, his boundaries remain intact, and his presence remains engaged. This steadiness allows her to feel heard without needing to push harder or become louder. Emotional leadership also means knowing when to step forward and when to step back. It is not constant reassurance or constant silence. It is attunement. A man who leads emotionally can sense when his presence is needed and when space will restore balance. He does not disappear to punish, nor does he hover to control outcomes. This discernment builds trust because his actions are intentional rather than impulsive. A woman feels that the relationship is guided by awareness, not by emotional turbulence. Over time, this pattern creates deep attraction. She associates him with emotional clarity rather than emotional chaos. She feels lighter around him because she does not have to anticipate explosions or manage his moods. His emotional leadership allows her to relax into her own feelings, knowing they will not overwhelm the connection. This dynamic fosters admiration, respect, and desire because he becomes a stabilizing force in her emotional world, someone who can hold intensity without being ruled by it, someone who leads with presence rather than reaction. The deepest emotional bond forms when a woman senses that you are whole within yourself. Neediness, even when subtle, creates pressure in a relationship. It communicates that your emotional stability depends on her responses, her availability, or her approval. While this may initially feel flattering, it quickly becomes exhausting. A woman does not want to be the source of your identity or emotional regulation. She wants to be a part of your life, not the center that holds it together. When you do not need her to complete you, you invite her into a connection that is spacious rather than demanding. Wholeness is felt, not declared. A man who is fulfilled in his purpose, values, and direction carries an inner calm that is deeply attractive. He does not chase validation because he already knows who he is. His presence is relaxed, not tense. He enjoys connection without clinging to it. This emotional independence creates safety because it removes the fear of emotional entrapment. A woman can move closer without feeling that she will be consumed by expectations or responsibility for your happiness. When a man needs a woman to fill emotional gaps, she instinctively feels the weight of that expectation. Even if unspoken, it creates an imbalance where she becomes the emotional regulator. This often leads to withdrawal because attraction requires freedom. In contrast, when a man stands firmly in his own life, a woman feels invited rather than obligated. She chooses him not out of guilt or fear of loss, but out of desire. Choice strengthens bonds far more than dependency ever could. Not needing her does not mean being emotionally distant or unavailable. It means loving from abundance rather than lack. You share your life without asking her to fix it. You express desire without turning it into demand. This balance allows intimacy to grow naturally. She feels that she can be fully herself without carrying the responsibility of maintaining your emotional stability. In this space, vulnerability becomes mutual rather than one-sided, and connection deepens without pressure. As the relationship evolves, this dynamic creates a profound sense of trust. She knows that you are with her because you want to be, not because you would fall apart without her. That knowledge allows her to invest emotionally without fear. She can lean in, open up, and love deeply because the connection is built on strength rather than need. The bond that forms here is resilient, expansive, and grounded in mutual choice, where love is shared freely instead of used to fill what is missing.